Hey guys, I'm back with a new video. In this video, let us learn about one of the most fundamental concepts of CSS, and that is the CSS box model. Now, CSS box model is an internal representation that puts an element that the browser renders in kind of a box boundary like this. And inside this box, we have the content area. So this is our content area. So the content area is basically where our content gets rendered for the element. So for example, if we have any element, whatever content we have inside that element will get displayed in this content area. Now outside the content area, we have something called as padding, which is used to give some spacing to our content area. So the region that I'm shading with yellow color represents the padding for the element. Next, right outside the padding, we have the border. So this purple boundary is our border. And finally, we have the margin, which is used to define spacing in between different elements. So margin is right outside the border. So this is what is called as the box model. Let us see this in action. So let us create a new folder right inside our CSS folder and name it as 2.css-box model. And inside this newly created folder, let us create a new file and name it as box-model.html. So let us quickly scaffold our basic HTML boilerplate. So type exclamation and press tab. And let us give the title as box model in CSS. Now let us link our CSS file. So link rel style sheet href styles.css and let us add a styles.css inside our box model folder. So now our CSS file is linked with our HTML file. Let us head over to styles.css and see how we can alter the size of these areas using CSS. Now right here, let us define a div. And inside it, let us first add a simple h2 heading and then add a description with the p element. So Alex, and here's a lorem 50. Next, let us copy the above div and paste it down below and change this to James. Now let us give this a preview in the browser. Now let us right click and click on inspect. Now if we hover over the elements that we just created, you will notice that they will get highlighted right inside the browser. So this blue area that you can see represents our content area where all the content goes. So if you hover any div, you will see that all the content that it has is represented by h2 and p, and it goes right inside the blue area. And then we have other layers like padding and margin, which I will discuss in just a minute. Now right outside the paragraph, we have the margin area, which is represented by the orange shade that you can see. Here in this example, we don't have the padding and the border because we haven't explicitly defined them as of now. Now with the Chrome DevTools, you can visualize any element in its box model representation. So let us see the paragraph element. So this is the box model representation for our paragraph element that we have in each of our divs. You can see it gives us the dimensions for our paragraph element. So our paragraph element is 428 pixel wide and 129.5 pixel in height. Then outside of this content area, which holds our paragraph, is the padding area, which on hovering you can see is empty. Then we have the border area, which is currently empty, and then we have the margin area where we have 16 pixels margin from top and bottom and no margin from left and right. So this margin of 16 pixel is the default margin that is assigned by the Chrome browser. Now let us see how we can change the size of these areas using CSS. So let us head over to our CSS file, and right here let us define our CSS rule for the div element. And as a first thing, let us add a padding all around the div. Let us use different values for each side. So for the top, let us say 10 pixel. For right, let us say 20 pixels. For bottom, 10 pixel, and for left, 10 pixels. So save the changes and give this a preview. So now for the div, you can see we are having a padding top of 10 pixels, a padding right of 20 pixels, a padding bottom of 10 pixels, and a padding left of 20 pixels, just as we defined. Now in short, we can also write this as using just two values. So let me comment this. So for padding, I can say 10 pixels top and bottom and 20 pixel left and right. So this essentially gives us the same thing. So 10 pixel top and bottom, 20 pixel left and right. Next, let us also set up a border around our divs. So for this we can make use of the border CSS property. So border. Now the first value here represents the thickness of the border that we want. So let us use the thickness as 2 pixels. Second value represents the type of border that we want. Here we want a solid border, so solid. And the last value represents the color of the border that you want. So let us use red color. So let us give this a preview in the browser and again visualize our box model for the div element. So for the div element, you can see we are having a border of 2 pixels all around and it has a red color, as you can see. Now you can see that these divs are almost stacked on top of one another. Now remember that margin is the space that is outside the border. So let us set the margin to 20 pixels all around. Margin 20 pixels. So now you can see there is a margin of 20 pixels all around and each of our divs is now separated and they are not stacked on top of one another. So this was all I wanted to cover about the introduction to CSS Box Model. Let's catch up in the very next one.